Most people assume that this video appeared by chance, that it was the algorithm, late-night fatigue, a distracted finger scrolling through the screen. They think they are just killing time. But Carl Jung understood something colder. Nothing that reaches you during a silent breakdown is a coincidence. What seems random is the psyche organizing itself to force a truth you have been postponing. If this video found you today, your life isn't about to change. It has already changed. You just haven't had the courage to accept it yet. There is a stage of human existence where everything seems to crumble at once. Work loses its meaning. Relationships become barren. The body feels heavy. And most interpret this moment as failure. They believe they are getting worse, that they have lost their way, that something has broken. This is where the most expensive mistake of modern life sets in, confusing dissolution with destruction. Jung observed this pattern in thousands of patients. It wasn't a decline. It was enantiodromia, an ancient Greek word he reclaimed to describe a brutally exact psychological mechanism. When anything is pushed to its extreme, it converts into its opposite. Excessive light produces blindness. Excessive control produces collapse. Excessive performance produces terminal exhaustion. And terminal exhaustion, when left uninterrupted, produces the only event the common mind fears, the awakening. What you call a crisis is not a system failure. It is the system working exactly as it should. The pain that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning is not the enemy. It is the messenger. It has come to tell you that the character you built to survive no longer fits the creature you have become. And contrary to what superficial self-help teaches, you will not emerge from this phase more motivated. You will emerge more naked, without the masks that guaranteed your acceptance, without the calculations that guaranteed your comfort, without the anesthetics that guaranteed your illusion. Most resist this moment, because they were trained to believe that feeling bad is always an error to be corrected. They run to the next course, to the next quick therapy, to the next relationship, to the next stimulus. And the more they run, the deeper the crisis becomes, because the psyche is not asking for distraction, it is demanding dissolution. And dissolution, in Jung's language, is the biochemical price of real transformation. What is happening then is this. You are not breaking apart. You are cracking from the inside to let out that which can no longer remain trapped. And it is here that the second illusion appears, perhaps the most persistent of all. You were taught since childhood to believe that personal development is a process of accumulation, that you become someone by adding habits, courses, titles, certifications, improved versions, that there is an ideal personality to be constructed, brick by brick, with effort and discipline. This is probably the most lucrative misunderstanding in the history of popular psychology, because Jung taught the opposite. You do not become who you are by adding, you become by removing. The theory of individuation starts from a premise that frightens the modern mind. There is within you an original configuration that was already complete before any conditioning. What life did was cover it with layers. Family layers, religious layers, cultural layers, romantic layers, professional layers. Each of these layers was useful at a certain moment. Each of them guaranteed your effective survival. And each of them, at the point where you now find yourself, has become a prison. It is not that you are changing. It is that the collective lie about who you should be is coming loose. The old skin is falling away, and what the mind recognizes as loss is merely the false self losing its authority. When you look in the mirror and do not recognize yourself, it is not because you have lost your way. It is because you have lost the mask. And the mask for a long time was the only thing you had. This explains why so many people, upon entering the phase of individuation, feel guilt instead of relief. They were loved for the mask, promoted for the mask, chosen for the mask. To remove the mask is to accept that a good portion of the bonds that sustain your life were built upon a negotiated version of yourself, a version useful to others, a version bearable for others, a version predictable for others, and when that version begins to crack, the others do not defend it. They punish you for daring to cease to exist. That is why this video found you. Not because the algorithm is intelligent, but because your psyche is ready to hear a truth it has been whispering to itself for months. And that is why I prepared the Código do Despertar for you. It is an inner map based on the psychology of Carl Jung, structured into 60 daily lessons, with keys, questions, and declarations that lead you, day after day, through the process of individuation in a practical way. You read the lesson, perform a micro-action, and write your reflections in the journal. It is not motivation. It is not shallow positivity. It is real psychological work, at the pace your transformation is already demanding. The first pinned comment of this video takes you directly to it. And, if what has been said so far touched something within you, leave just one word below aceto. This symbolic comment is the first contract you sign with yourself after years of signing contracts with everyone else. Returning to the core of the argument, there is a second lie that needs to be dismantled, and it is quieter than the first. It has nothing to do with who you are. It has to do with when this should have happened. Modern culture organized itself around a cruel temporal equation. Young success equals a fulfilled life, delay equals irreversible failure. You were educated on a clock that is not yours. And, at a certain point, you began to look back and count the things that didn't happen by the age they were supposed to happen. The marriage that didn't work out, the degree that came late, the career that stagnated, the opportunity that passed. And over each of these absences, your psychism pasted a sentence: I wasted my time. Jung would have looked at that phrase with the cold patience of someone who already knows what it's about. He called this the provisional life, an entire existence lived as preparation for a real existence that never arrives. The person doesn't choose their true work because it's not yet the moment. They don't end the wrong relationship because they can't yet. They don't start the project they love because they aren't ready yet. And decades later, they discover that not yet was the only house they ever lived in. The provisional life is the mourning that no one understands, because there is no funeral for the self that was never born. But Jung didn't stop at the denunciation. He revealed the hidden mechanism. The unconscious, he said, has a prospective function. It doesn't only look at the past that formed you. It looks, above all, at the future that awaits you. Every loss that hurt, every door that closed, every silent humiliation, every rejection, every postponement, every apparent delay was part of an invisible engineering that was sculpting you for the exact moment in which you now find yourself. It is not that time was against you, it is that you were trained to measure it with the wrong stopwatch. If what should have happened had happened sooner, it would have happened to the wrong person. With the mask still intact, with the arrogance still intact, with the unconsciousness still intact, you would have received the miracle, but with hands incapable of holding it. What life calls a delay is almost always mercy in disguise. The psyche deliberately delays the encounter with that which only makes sense after the fall. There is a brutal difference between the person who gets something by luck and the person who becomes capable of sustaining what they conquer. The first crumbles when the wave passes. The second remains because they were cooked over a slow fire. And slow fire is exactly the psychological name for what you call the years I lost. You didn't lose them. You were slowly built from the inside, while everyone around you believed you were standing still. And here enters the third revelation, the one most people avoid because it requires silence to be perceived. The most important transformation of your life didn't happen on any stage. It had no witnesses. It had no applause. It happened in the lukewarm space of routine, when you continued to do the minimum amidst the chaos, when you decided not to yield to the same old revenge, when you chose silence instead of useless explanation, when you got up for a journey that no longer made sense just because you had agreed with yourself that you were still going to try one more day. Jung called this the integration of the shadow. But there is a part of the shadow that almost no one mentions, the golden shadow. It is not just what you repressed out of shame. It is also what you repressed out of fear of being too much. Your hidden intelligence so as not to threaten. Your hidden sensitivity so as not to be exploited. Your hidden ambition so as not to seem arrogant. Your hidden creativity so as not to fail in public. Everything that you could have been, but swallowed to survive. These parts do not die. They keep fermenting. They keep building pressure inside the unconscious. And when the crisis finally arrives, they use the collapse of the old self as a breach to emerge. That which is now being born in you is not a new version. It is the version that already existed before you learned to be convenient. The invisible work of recent years consisted of preparing the internal soil to receive this without shattering. It is not motivation. It is psychic biology. It is not luck. It is sedimentation. It is not a beginning. It is a return. And when the people who only knew you in the mask phase look at you and say, "You've changed," they will be right. They just won't know how to say that what changed was merely the permission you gave yourself to finally stop pretending. And it is at this exact point, between permission and action, that most people freeze. Not for lack of internal structure, for lack of guidance. It was for this specific interval that the Código do Despertar was designed. 60 days, one lesson a day, keys, questions, and declarations that translate Jung into concrete micro-actions. The first pinned comment takes you there. Do not postpone another crossing for fear of another beginning. Start now, today, while the crack is still open. Picking up the thread, the point arrives where none of this moves forward unless one last barrier is crossed. And that barrier is not out there. It is not the family that doesn't understand. It is not the partner who doesn't grow. It is not the boss who doesn't recognize. It is not the money that is lacking. All of these are secondary obstacles, external echoes of a primary obstacle. The true impediment to your transformation is the truth you refuse to admit to yourself. Jung called this the persona, but not as a piece of clothing that one takes off, as a second skin that has adhered to the identity. The persona is useful in the beginning of life. It allows one to operate in society, fulfill roles, execute tasks, receive conditional affection. But in the second half of existence it becomes a dungeon, because the price of maintaining it is the continuous lie about what one feels, wants, fears, and refuses. There is one specific phrase, just one, that you have been avoiding saying to yourself for years. It might be, "I never loved this person as I should have." It might be, "I hate the profession I chose." It might be, "I am envious of the life I pretended not to want." It might be, "I betrayed myself to be loved by someone who sabotaged me." It might be, "I no longer believe in the God they imposed on me." It might be something even more unbearable. You know your phrase. You don't need me to say it. And it is exactly this phrase that keeps you spinning in circles. As long as this phrase is not admitted in silence within your own chest, no external change will be sustained. You can change cities, jobs, partners, appearance. The phrase comes inside the luggage, and it will reproduce in the new setting the same pattern it produced in the old one. Because the psyche is not fooled by geographic change, it is only dissolved by truth. Accepting this truth is not dramatic. It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes almost always with a small internal silence in which the argument with yourself finally ceases. It is the moment you stop arguing against the evidence your own life has been presenting for years. From there, something strange happens. Decisions stop being difficult, not because they become easy, but because they cease to exist as decisions. They become mere consequences of a truth that is now non-negotiable. And when this happens, three phenomena appear almost simultaneously. They usually frighten those who haven't been warned. The first is solitude. Not common solitude, the kind cured with a phone call. It is a qualitative solitude. You are still surrounded. Only you realize that you can no longer speak to half the people around you without translating yourself, without diminishing yourself, without editing in real time what you feel to fit their understanding. This is not pride. It is individuation. Jung was clear. Individuation inevitably separates. Not out of haughtiness, but because those who become whole stop needing the packs that were sustained by mutual fragmentation. Many people around you loved the version of you that was also suffering in silence. When you stop suffering at their rhythm, they drift away without understanding why. The second is synchronicity, those small alignments that cannot be explained by logic. The right book that appears, the random conversation that answers the question you were asking in silence, the name that comes to mind seconds before the message arrives. This video for many is a synchronicity right now. Jung insisted that synchronicity is not magic. It is in a causal correspondence between the internal world and the external world, occurring precisely when the psyche is crossing a turning point. If you have noticed absurdly coincidental signs lately, it is not paranoia. It is the unconscious communicating with reality through the gaps in the rationale. The third is the need for rest, a deep, almost animal rest, which the productive mind of your time interprets as laziness. You were taught that rest must be earned, that it must be conquered with effort, that it can only be accepted after the goal. This is the echo of a sick culture. Jung understood rest as part of wholeness. A psyche approaching the self does not run, it alights. It lets silence do the work that agitation no longer knows how to do. If you have received at once a different solitude, a series of strange coincidences, and an exhaustion that doesn't go away even with sleep, you are not breaking apart. You are crossing over. Only this is the moment when most people give up. Because it seems like everything got worse when in fact everything became true. The person cannot bear the weight of truth without structure and retreats back into the mask. And years later, they look back and recognize that at that moment, life offered a door they refused. Do not refuse this one. The Código do Despertar exists exactly for this crossing. It is the map placed alongside the experience so that it does not dissolve into confusion. 60 days, one lesson a day, daily integration on paper, transformation sedimented in the flesh. The first pinned comment of this video has the link. Do not open another tab. Do not leave it for tomorrow. Every postponement here is a reaffirmation of the mask, and your mask no longer has strength. Choose before inertia chooses for you. And we arrive finally at the point where all this reasoning transforms into something colder than information. It transforms into responsibility, because from now on, ignorance is no longer available to you. Most people look at the end of videos like this for a finish line, a promise that there is a day when everything settles, a final milestone where one can say, "There, now I have arrived." Jung would have smiled at this expectation, not with mockery, with clinical melancholy, because there is no arrival. Individuation is not a destination, it is a direction. It is not an event. It is a continuous alignment between what you now know and what you from now on choose. You will not wake up transformed, you will wake up informed. And the difference between these two states is the only thing that decides if your life changes or if it merely gains a more beautiful vocabulary to describe the same dungeon. People return to the mask not because they prefer the lie, but because truth without practice dissolves into memory, and memory without repetition becomes intimate folklore. You tell yourself years later that one day you believed you were going to change. From today on, the version of you that didn't know no longer exists. There is only the version of you that knows and acts, and the version of you that knows and does not act. And this second version suffers a specific kind of pain, which Jung described as the most unbearable of all, the pain of betraying one's own consciousness after having touched it. It is not necessary to act grandiosely. It is not necessary to destroy everything that exists. It is only necessary to stop defending that which you already know must fall. Do not sustain for one more month the relationship your psyche has already buried. Do not repeat for one more quarter the speech your soul no longer signs. Do not perform for one more year the version others love, and you cannot stand in silence. This video found you because you were ready. And being ready does not mean feeling comfortable. It means no longer being able to pretend. It means the crack has reached the layer where it stops being a scratch on the surface and becomes a structural fissure. It is now that life decides if you cross or if you coat the fissure with another layer and postpone for another decade that which it has been demanding for months. You can close this video and go back to sacrificing your soul to keep your mask acceptable. It will work for a while, then it will collapse again, deeper, darker, with less margin. Or you can accept the price of freedom now, while the door is still open. The guide is in the first pinned comment. The illusion is over. Choose.